we have to retrain the way we look at things. Okay. So that's kind of how I want to lead off, even though we do tend to focus on the negative more so than the positive. We can definitely make sure that we look at things in a more realistic and a more objective standpoint and come to a conclusion that's not always negative. We can learn from the positive, not just the negative. All right. So that's gonna conclude this episode. I hope you get something from it. I know I did as I was researching for this. You already know I appreciate you. Continue sharing the videos, man. Get them subscribers up, man. Because we trying to go live and all that. We trying to go to at least 5 days a week as well. So help us get to that point by subscribing, sharing the video, liking. So we can get in that algorithm. So we can make this a full-time thing and not just part-time. Okay. You already know, as always, I am you, you are me, love always, love eternal. Remember, the worst thing you do is lie to yourself. All the links will be in the description. You already know, for the books, the merch. If you want a consultation, all that stuff, the links will be in the description, man. And you know what? I think we made that case, baby. All right. Deuces. One love. Hey, what up, YouTubians? Welcome back to another episode of Making the Case. I am no other than your host, Dr. Jacob Isom, educated speaker, author, entrepreneur, content creator, father, a little bit of everything, okay? Hey, we back at it, I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving if you do that thing. If not, I hope you enjoyed the time off that you got, if you got time off. For all those who, were diligent at working, hey, pretty sure you made some good money. So we recorded a video before the holidays, and then now right after the holidays, we getting right back into it. We on episode 45, baby. We on episode Barack. I think he was the 45th president. Fact check me, okay? I might be wrong, but I believe he was, okay? So we just chugging along. So today's episode is, why does it seem like we focus on the negative more so than the positive? Now, it always, well, sorry, I always get ahead of myself. I'm sorry. We got to go over our two-channel norms, okay? One, we attack points and not people. And then two, we don't do all the cussing, the derogatory stuff. We're professional over here, okay? So now we can get into my opening statement. I always it baffled me why it seemed like we always focus on the negative. Why it seemed like I always saw negative. I mean, it's still to this day, right? When you look at um TV shows, we know TV shows, movies, plays, it's all about drama, right? And a lot of that drama is more so of the negative variety, right? When we look at when people on the telephone talking to each other, right? What is more likely they talking about? Some drama that's happening in the family, outside the family, or something, right? It seems like that our lives revolve around drama and negativity. Okay. I just could never put my hands on it. Why did it seem like the case? Okay. Until this episode right here. All right. So, in this episode, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make my case on why it is that we focus on the negative instead of the positive, because there is a legit reason. Okay. And so, for those of you that didn't know, this episode is just for you. Okay. I learned a lot doing research on it, and I believe you will learn a lot as well. So hold on tight, buckle your safety belts, okay? Because we got some good info for you, and hopefully you can take something from it, apply it to your life, and make it do what it do. Okay. So without further ado, you already know I have three pieces of evidence that I'm going to show you to prove to you to make my case of why it is. All right. So for my first piece of evidence to why it seems like we focus on a negative more so than a positive, we're going to bring up a ideology, a concept, a theory, whatever you want to call it, something that's called negativity bias. Okay. Now, if you're familiar with biases at all, there are many different kind of biases. You got negativity bias, you got cognitive bias, you got confirmation bias, and there's more biases out there, but I won't bore you with the rest of them. I'm sure at some point we'll definitely cover some more biases because biases are very important because they impact us on a day-to-day basis. Okay. So for my first piece of evidence, I want to pretty much present to you what is negativity bias and why it is so important. And not only that, why it is a real thing. Okay. To why we focus on the negative is because of our bias towards negativity. All right. So let's get into the article. But by the way, this is from a platform called Very Well Mind. I want to say we read from this before. I can't remember, but it's more so a mental health platform, right? So without further ado, let's get into it. All right. So, what is negativity bias? Negativity bias is a tendency not only to register negative stimuli more rarely, but also to dwell on these events, also known as positive negative asymmetry. This negativity bias means that we feel the sting of a rebuke more powerfully than we feel the joy of a praise. I think all of us feel this way for certain, right? It just something positive just don't feel the same as something negative, right? And you may have been wondering why that is. Well, now you know. We're gonna get into some more, right? This psychological phenomenon explains why bad first impressions can be so difficult to overcome and why past traumas can have such long lingering effects. Absolutely. In almost any interaction, we are more likely to notice negative things and later remember them more vividly. As humans, we tend to remember traumatic experiences better than positive ones. We call insults better than praise. React more strongly to negative stimuli. Think about negative things more frequently than positive ones. Respond more strongly to negative events than to equally positive ones. For example, you might be having a great day at work when a coworker make an offhand comment that you find irritating. You then find yourself stewing over his words for the rest of the workday. Man, I can so relate to this, and I know you can too. Oh my God. It only takes one negative thing somebody to say for you to be thinking about it the rest of the day. And you be trying to get it out your head, but for some reason you just can't. Oh my God. This is like a perfect example. When you get home from work and somehow someone asks you how your day was, you reply that it was terrible, even though it was overall quite good despite the one negative incident. Now, I wouldn't go that far, but I get what they're trying to say. What the research says. Research has shown that across a wide array of psychological events, people tend to focus more on negative as they try to make sense of the world. We tend to pay more attention to negative events, learn more from negative outcomes and experiences, which typically you grow and learn more from negativity than you do positive. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, or it's a thing that is more beneficial to you. Let me just say that. Make decisions based off negative information more than positive data. I think that's very true as well. It is the bad thing to grab our attention, stick to our memories, and in many cases influence decisions that we make. Fear is, oh my gosh, fear is a huge decision maker for us. We make a lot of decisions based off fear. Motivation. Psychological research suggests that the negative biases influence motivation to complete a task. People have less motivation when the incentive is framed as a means to gain something than when the same incentive will help them avoid the loss of something. This can play a role in your motivation to pursue a goal. Rather than focus on what you will gain, if you keep working towards something, you're more likely to dwell on what you might have to give up in order to achieve that goal or what you might lose. Yeah, absolutely. Bad news. Additionally, study has shown that negative news is more likely to be perceived as truthful, since negative information draws greater attention. It also may be seen having greater validity. This might be why bad news seems to garner more attention. Politics. And I was going to say something, but I'm going to read this first before I say what I'm about to say. Difference in negativity bias also has been linked to political ideology. Some research suggests that conservatives may have stronger psychological responses to negative information than liberals. Some evidence, for example, has found that people who consider themselves politically conservative are more likely to rate ambiguous stimuli as threatening. Such difference in negativity bias might explain why some people are more likely to value things such as tradition and security, while others are more open to embracing ambiguity and change. When it comes to the political landscape that just what we just witnessed in this year's election, negativity bias all the way through it. All we did was focus on the negative of Harris' campaign or Trump. When they talk about Trump, all you can focus on is what his convictions, what he did wrong. That's all they focus on. Like, but one has to say, even though we understand why this is the case, right? It's one thing to understand it, but it's another thing to play it out. And we have to understand how this have implications on our cultural understanding. It has implications on how we parent our kids and a whole host of factors, how we educate. Like, so the focus on negativity, although there is some credible evidence to why it happened, it still impacts us in a very, very strong way. Okay. One thing that we're gonna have to keep in mind. Examples of negativity bias. You received a performance review of work. We already know how that is. You had an argument with your significant other, and afterward, you find yourself focusing on all your partner's flaws. Well, negativity bias in relationships definitely is part of the reason why relationships tend to end, right? When someone has made a mistake, it's hard to forgive them for that mistake because you're going to keep bringing it back up. It's always going to be in your mind the mistake that they made. So you humiliated yourself in front of your friend years ago. Where negative bias come from, our tendency to pay more attention to bad things, overlook good things is likely a result of evolution. Early in human history, paying attention to bad, danger, and negative threats in the world was literally a matter of life and death. Okay. Those who are more attuned to danger, who pay more attention to the bad things around them, were more likely to survive. This meant that they were also more likely to hand down genes that made them more attentive to danger. So that makes a whole lot of sense. And I think I'm trying to think if I want to read anything else. When it comes to this, no, that's pretty much it. How it affect our relationships, and yeah. So I thought this was a great read and a great breakdown of negativity bias and the fact that when we look at a lot of things are evolution based, right? Which also that means they're cultural, right? So they have been established in culture, maybe not just our genes, but also, our culture. So I just wanted you to understand what negativity bias is and why it is that we do seem to focus on the negative more than the positive. All right. So let's get into our second piece of evidence, and we're going to give even more of a breakdown of this negativity bias and how it really impacts us. Let's get it. All right. So for my second piece of evidence, we're going to go a little bit further with negativity and bias and the reason why we focus on the negative more so we do the positive. So we taking this from the National Library of Medicine, and the title of the article read, "Not all emotions are created equal. The negativity bias in social emotional development." All right. So this is a very long article. Once again, I'm not going to read all to it. It's just certain parts that I do want to kind of point out to you. And we're going to start with, let's start here. Infants are exposed to a great deal of social information from birth, and their ability to use this information effectively is critical for development in many domains and for survival in general. This raises several important questions. Do infants attend equally to all facets of this information, or do they attend to certain facets more than others? Do they, in addition, learn and remember particular kinds of information better than others? What evolutionary and developmental consequences do these ways of approaching their environment have? In this paper, we propose that infants display a negativity bias. That is, infants attend to more to are more influenced by and use to a greater degree negative rather than positive facets of their environment. We propose possible genetic pathway for the emergence of negativity bias, and we argue that this bias serves important evolutionary and developmental functions. So I find this very interesting because what they're trying to say is that, and I know in the last article they mentioned evolution, right? They're trying to say from literally birth or from infancy that baby exhibit negativity bias as well, and not just adults, not just teenagers. So it literally runs the whole gamut of our whole lifespan, which I think is an interesting claim. And clearly they did the studies to kind of, and the background research to kind of make this claim. So while the issue of negativity bias has not been extensively explored in infant development, it has been explored in myriad lines of adult and animal research. Although the traditional view of the impact of valence information has been as bipolar scale with positive and negative information have an equal but opposite impact on the organism behavior, much recent research has challenged this assumption. At a very basic psychological level, evidence from learning research indicates a powerful negativity bias. Negative reinforcement, as opposed to comparable positive reinforcement, leads to faster learning that is more resistant to extinction in both human adults and an animal. And it's interesting that whether it's business, education, and a lot of different other fields, like when you look at positive versus negative reinforcement, which one is kind of more motivational, right? It's typically right your negative reinforcements, like what kind of consequence or punishment you're going to get versus what kind of reward are you going to get? What kind of prize are you going to get that will help kind of put you on the right track? Will give you what ideal behavior that we want people to exhibit. So even that even further helps make the case that negative kind of outweighs a positive. So where are we at? Oh, at a higher cognitive level, negative stimuli are hypothesized to carry greater information value than positive stimuli, and to thus require greater attention in cognitive processing. Accordingly, adults spend more time looking at negative than at positive stimuli. Perceive negative stimuli to be more complex than positive ones and form more complex cognitive representation of negative than positive stimuli. So when we look at it, this is amazing. When we look at it across the board, we're looking at the negative connotations of various different aspects of our life, we're going to always pay more attention to, right? If we're walking down the street and we see some suspicious activity, suspicious people, we're going to pay more attention to that than that couple over there that's doing a photo shoot for their wedding. I mean, it's, I guess it is what it is, right? At a still more complex level of psychological function, the negativity bias has also repeatedly been revealed in adults' judgment and decision making. When making judgment, people consistently weigh the negative aspects of an event or stimulus more heavily than the positive. This is also true of impression formation. When given description of a hypothetical person's moral and immoral behaviors or adjectives describing a person's good and bad traits, subjects process and use the negative more than the positive information and arrive at an intense. But furthermore, people need less negative trait information to make trait inferences about others, where clearly they need more positive things. And I mean, you see that with dating and just in a relationship in general, right? People need more positive. People can hear one negative thing about you, but like, oh, I ain't messing with them. But it could be 5 positive to 1 negative. Like, they still question it. It's very interesting. Let's see. And that, to be honest with you, that's really all I want to read from this article. I thought it was a great article because it literally took it to an infant aspect. So we talked about evolution. So we're literally talking about our whole lifespan that we're more so geared toward negativity. which it makes sense why a lot of people have negative thinking, right? But the great news is we can do something about this, all right? Which lends itself to my last piece of evidence, all right? So let's wrap things up with my last piece of evidence.
We all have a tendency to focus more on the negative things that happen to us than the positive. Take this example. At work, you receive feedback from your boss. It's mostly positive with one thing to improve, but you become completely consumed in that one thing, replaying it over and over in your mind. It's called filtering, and it's dangerous because, as you'd expect, it leads to a flat mood, low self-esteem, and unhealthy pessimism. If you find yourself doing this, take a moment to snap out of it. Look at the evidence. Ask yourself whether other people would have drawn the same conclusions. Come up with counter-arguments. We all have a tendency to focus more on the negative.
All right, so there was my third piece of evidence. I always try to end off on something positive, right? Or something that will kind of help you, as you navigate this world that we live in. And so I'm gonna touch on this as well as getting to my closing statement. But one thing that we have to understand, although we are definitely it appears based off the evidence that I presented for you that we focus more so on the negative than we do the positive. So that means it's ever so important for us to train our thinking, train the way we look at things, have a different perspective on the way that we view the world in general, right? And other people as well, right? So I think those four things that the young lady mentioned in the video is a good way to start with that, right? We have to look at the facts. We have to look at the real life data that is put in front of us instead of making this case because we know our brain gonna automatically go back to the negative, right? So we have to retrain ourselves because we receive a lot of stimuli that's negative. All right. So we have to make sure that we're not kind of in this funk all the time. We don't let one bad, because I hear it all the time, right? People are like, I'm having a bad day. But the way I look at it is, no, you're not having a bad day. I've never had a bad day in my life. You want to know why I never had a bad day in my life? Because I never had 24 hours in a day where everything went wrong. 24 hours is a day, correct? Okay. So, no, we just have negative or bad moments. We have to retrain the way we look at things. Okay. So that's kind of how I want to lead off, even though we do tend to focus on the negative more so than the positive. We can definitely make sure that we look at things in a more realistic and a more objective standpoint and come to a conclusion that's not always negative. We can learn from the positive, not just the negative. All right. So that's gonna conclude this episode. I hope you got something from it. I know I did as I was researching for this. You already know I appreciate you. Continue sharing the videos, man. Get them subscribers up, man. Because we trying to go live and all that. We trying to go to at least 5 days a week as well. So help us get to that point by subscribing, sharing the video, liking. So, we can get in that algorithm. So, we can make this, a full-time thing and not just part-time. Okay. You already know, as always, I am you, you are me, love always, love eternal. Remember, the worst thing you do is lie to yourself. All the links will be in the description. You already know, for the books, the merch. If you want a consultation, all that stuff, the links will be in the description, man. And you know what? I think we made that case, baby. All right. Deuces. One love.